Hey everyone, it's Hamish from the Young Investors Podcast. Myself and Brandon are excited to bring you your weekly rundown of the latest business and investing news from around the world. Now, a quick reminder before we get into the podcast is that nothing in this podcast should be taken on as personal financial advice. If you're ever unsure about your finances or investing, make sure you reach out to a qualified financial advisor. But with that said, let's get into another episode of the Young Investors Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back. Hamish Hodder has turned his heater off, and we are good to go for the Young Investors Podcast.
We had a false start. As soon as we started, I just realized my ducted heating's on, and this room gets hot enough on its own with like the lights and everything. So yeah, if I'd left that heater on, you would have just seen beads of sweat just slowly coming down my face throughout the podcast. So.
As soon as I started doing the intro to the podcast, Hamish was like, "Oh no, wait, we've got to stop. I'm going to cook in here."
Yeah, it's really funny, and like the heater's like right at my feet, so it just blows if I'm sitting here, just blows hot air on me. So
yeah, can be good though if you have an air vent right at your feet in the depths of winter. Keeps you nice and warm. Yeah, I
just wish it was you could control it a little bit more. It's it's just on or off, and on is for some reason this particular vent. It's like I don't know, it's
piping hot,
just blasting out hot air. So yeah, I'm glad.
So that's why I'm in a jumper. And Hamish is always just in t-shirts.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the central heating, I wish there was kind of heating that I could heat specific rooms because I can only heat the whole house because it's central heating. But upstairs just gets really, really hot, particularly this room because the sun rises across through this window as well. So it's like the sun and it just cooks me.
And the hot air rising.
Yeah. So this room is always hot. It's never cold.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're toasty, but not too toasty over there. It's bloody cold over in Canberra. But anyway, that's the weather. That's the latest in the weather report. How you been anyway? What you been up to? You been doing much?
Yeah, going well. No, just as I said last week, 80% of the time I'm editing. So I'm in editing mode at the moment, putting out another video. I've been kind of experimenting with exploring outside of. Usually I look at US economics in my videos, and I've been exploring a little bit more of different countries. So I did one on Pakistan last week, and by the time this podcast comes out, there should be one that's out on Turkey. So,
okay.
It's been kind of interesting to explore the similarities between the economic problems going on in different countries, and then also the clear differences between different countries. So, that's what I've been up to.
Very cool. And all the Indians are watching your latest video on Pakistan.
Yeah, that was really funny. I didn't actually expect that, but after you said it, and then I kind of thought about it, it makes sense because Pakistan's right next to India and used to be a part of India as well. But yeah, about 60% of the viewership on that video is from India, which is kind of surprising. It's definitely the first time that's happened. I've had, most of my videos are like 35%, or the biggest percentage is American. And then sometimes I'll have the biggest percentage will be Australian if it's an Australian topic. But yeah, I've never had any other countries. So yeah, there you go.
Shout out to all the Indian Young Investors Podcast fans out there.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
we've got a few.
Yeah, and we've got more now. They've
exactly
they've all come over.
You're bringing in you're doing what is it, the Disney strategy or the Netflix strategy? Target India.
Yeah.
Or is that Zuck? I can't remember. Maybe that was Zuck. Someone said it.
I think it's pretty much everybody at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, Ray Dalio's in the news. We're going to talk about that today.
He's back.
Yep, he is in the news. Yeah, I'm making a video on him at the moment. He got some very interesting comments as well out of Satya Nadella from Microsoft around the whole Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard.
Yep.
So that's what I'll be talking about today. What are you talking about? I haven't had a look at what you've put here.
We have Australian inflation data for the month of May. So we've got some more numbers to look at. Don't you just love looking at percentages? Well, I know I do. So we're going to talk about it. And we'll also talk about corporate bankruptcies in the US. And if we get to it, I want to talk about a potential gambling advertisement ban in Australia. So yeah, we've got lots and lots to talk about. And hey, we've got a new sponsor.
Breaking news.
We have a new sponsor. That's the most important part of this podcast.
Yeah. Well, tell us about it, Hamish. Tell us about it.
Yeah, how about you do this ad read?
How about no?
How about come on, pull your weight. I do every
Pull
ad
my
read.
weight.
Every ad read. I do all the deals.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. Because I have not read the ad read. I was just going to be reading it blind.
No, I'm just joking. Today's episode is brought to you by Seeking Alpha, your one-stop shop for stock analysis, market data, and news. Access expert analysis and news for thousands of stocks. View buy, hold, and sell ratings from members, Wall Street analysts, and Seeking Alpha's own algorithm. Screen for stocks using a variety of fundamental and technical analysis metrics. Access up to 10 years of financial data and company filings. And manage your portfolio by tracking your investments with price alerts so you never miss a buying opportunity again. Check the link in the episode description, or head directly to seekingalpha.me/young investors to try Seeking Alpha for free for 14 days and then $239 annually. So go check it out. Yeah. We've had Seeking Alpha as a sponsor on the podcast before. And go check them out.
Yeah, excited to be partnering with them more long term as well. For those that don't remember, they were the ones that helped take us over to America for the Berkshire meeting. For those three podcasts while we're over in the States, they were the sponsor there. Always love working with Seeking Alpha. They've been very generous, they're very enabling. They want to help us do new things, which is really cool. It's always good to have a sponsor like that. So we're happy to have them on board.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to go deep on companies, there is so much analysis on there. You'll never go through all of it. So
I know it sounds sus now because we're sponsored by them, but I probably use Seeking Alpha more than anything else, any other kind of platform for my own investing. It actually is quite handy, and I'm not just saying that because they're sponsoring it. It actually is quite handy. Because you do get all the news. You also get the 10 years of financial data, which is always helpful. Not that you can't get that elsewhere, but no, it is surprisingly useful. Anyway, do I sound like a shill when I say?
Yeah. Try it, you'll like it. So
try it today /young investors. All right. Hey, can I talk about Ray Dalio?
Yeah. What's he been saying? Has he been speaking coherently? Because the last interview he did, he was making absolutely no sense. So,
oh my gosh, he's so like he just knows macroeconomics at such a detailed level that sometimes when he explains things, he kind of just brushes over bits that to him seem like assumed knowledge, but to the rest of us definitely are not assumed knowledge. So sometimes when he's like explaining things, it can just get so complicated so quickly because he just leaves half the stuff out. He'll just be like, okay. So then you have this problem with this specific thing about this specific macroeconomic. And you're like, wait. How do we just jump from having, dollar bills stacked up to now we're talking about Zimbabwe hyperinflation? I don't know. Anyway,
and to be fair on Ray Dalio, he's limited by the constraints of CNBC's like 4 questions that they get in like a 5-minute interview.
True.
His stuff, like the economic machine video that I think is a 30-minute video explaining how the economy works. That is great. I always use his graphics in my videos because they're just perfect when you're talking about macroeconomic issues and interest rates, and it helps you really understand those issues. So we'll give him some credit that he does have good stuff, but unfortunately, cable TV is like, what's going on in the economy? Where's the stock market going? All right, next. So you kind of get that.
That's true. He always gets interrupted, always, without fail.
It's so annoying. It's so annoying when he's being interviewed by like 4 or 5 different hosts on CNBC, and they all want to get their questions in, and it just it's just rushed. It's not exactly a good format for that.
The way he talks is like, okay, so I'll break it down. There are 3 main forces at play here. So force number 1 is geopolitical tension. And then he'll say like 2 sentences on the first point. And then they'll be like, oh, so another question about China, blah, 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 blah.
So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin?
Yeah, or something like that. Actually, though, just soundbite hunting. But yeah, so unfortunately, he never gets the opportunity really to explain his thoughts entirely, but he got through a fair bit. He did. I've listened to one he did with CNBC and one he did with Bloomberg, and he was talking about the US debt situation. And I thought it was quite interesting because he genuinely does think that this could turn into a bit of a crisis, like a full-blown debt crisis. For context, the US now sits at $32 trillion worth of national debt. How's that? That's
not bad.
It's quite some number. Some number. But it's interesting. There was really, I guess, two key points to his argument as to why this is going to be a real pickle. And the first, as you might imagine, is surrounding debt servicing payments. So obviously back in 2020, when the US government issued bonds, it was pretty easy, low interest rates. The Federal Reserve was just lapping them up. And now that the debt ceiling has been suspended, they're obviously doing the same thing. They're still trying to sell more bonds, but this time it's now at a much higher interest rate, which means obviously now their debt servicing costs, the interest that they have to pay to the people that are buying those bonds, is going to be a lot higher. So Ray's point is that he's pretty worried that the US won't be able to grow their economy well enough and in this next few years, and essentially the debt servicing costs will basically just eat into the total pool of money that the US has to spend.
Yep.
So, yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly if you look at kind of how their debt has trended and then, where interest rates are now, then yeah, it certainly looks like that's going to be an issue because you're right. I mean, just even if they weren't increasing the debt, just the fact that interest rates have risen, of course, increases the percentage of government revenue that goes towards servicing those payments. But debt is still rising. I mean, they're still running a massive multi-trillion-dollar deficit. So it's not just that interest rates have gone up; it's that interest rates have gone up, and that's amplified the problem. But the underlying issue is still there, which is the government's appetite for taking on and using an enormous amount of debt has been really excessive, especially in the last couple of years when you include kind of COVID relief and that sort of thing, where you're not talking about just 1 or 2 trillion a year. Now you're talking about 5-6 trillion a year, and actually very significant increases to the debt load. So it is interesting, and not to kind of harp on Pakistan this whole podcast because it's all in my head.
No, please
but
do.
It was interesting looking at their situation because some of these countries are in much worse situations. In Pakistan, actually, their entire government revenue goes towards their debt service payments. So they're in the very extreme end of the situation where all of the tax revenue comes in, all of it goes to paying debt, and then they have to pay for defense and healthcare and government staff and all of that stuff. And all of that is just new debt. So that's obviously the very end of the extreme, but you can see it can be taken to extremes in desperate situations. Yeah,
that's crazy. That is actually, imagine just having no money after you've paid your debts. It's like, well, now we've got, sorry, that road needs repairing, that bridge fell down. Can't do it. We got no money. Anyway, that's Ray Dalio's first point. He is worried about debt service payments. But then on top of that, the second thing he's concerned about is the supply-demand equation for US treasuries. So he noted that many countries feel right now that they actually hold too many US treasuries and they're quite simply not as eager to buy them as what they once were. For example, China's share of ownership of the US Treasury pool has been declining over recent times. So there are definitely countries that are kind of satisfied with, I don't know if satisfied is the right word, with the amount of US debt they've got, and their appetite is reducing. But Ray's concern is that if the government needs to sell a lot of bonds, but the demand is weak, they'll either need to raise interest rates so that that debt becomes more enticing for investors to go out and buy, or alternatively, as we've seen the past couple of years, who becomes the buyer? The Federal Reserve. Yep. And that essentially means more money printing, and it gives us the same situation that we've already had for the last couple of years. Yeah.
I mean, a really good kind of isolated example of that situation was COVID. The government very quickly needed a bunch of debt, and they couldn't afford to offer higher interest rates on that debt. It's one way to kind of look at it. So the Fed just stepped in and basically bought all of the debt at low interest rates. And, that's the tough balance that the US could potentially face, is that they might need to offer higher interest rates for the amount of debt that they need, but then they can't handle that because then the debt payments are too high. So then it's does the Fed bail out the government, and that creates inflation, or does the government have to cut back its spending? And that's the muddly kind of situation that they could find themselves in.
So you can start to see how these two issues are they work, they kind of snowball each other. They're linked. Yeah, exactly right. There was another thing on this topic as well. Ray also made the point that many countries are trending away from the dollar as they themselves fear US sanctions around what's been going on with the Russia-Ukraine war. So other countries don't want to get stuck being reliant on the US when America was so easily able to basically block Russia out of all US dollar transactions last year. So he said that was another factor. Some countries are trending away from using US dollars to make themselves a little bit more sanction-proof, I guess, minimizing the risk if there were sanctions thrown their way from the US. So... Yeah, I don't know too much about that. I don't know the ins and outs of that kind of stuff, but it was interesting and it kind of makes sense. Ray Dalio still brought it up as an important point.
Yeah, and I mean, just the US having the world's reserve currency gives them so much control over the world's financial system, directly and indirectly. So it is when there is instability, and this is Dalio's big thing recently on the changing world order. This is something that happens even less frequently than these kind of big debt cycles, but if you look back far enough, you see these cycles of different countries or different empires having the world's reserve currency and how those rise and fall. And that's kind of been his whole kind of campaign recently. And like the economic machine, he has a video explaining the last couple thousand years of the changing world order and the change in the world reserve currencies and what threatens them and that sort of thing. So super interesting if you want to check that out.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all I had to say. There are his main 2 points. Either the US will struggle with the debt servicing costs and need to, essentially just take on more debt to help out, or that the demand will wane and the supply will rise for US treasuries, and thus the Fed will have to be a buyer once again, which is exactly what just happened. And it didn't work out so well, but there we go. Yeah, so interesting. It's obviously not a topic that I'm a genius at, but I found it interesting actually watching those couple of things, those couple of interviews. It did make a lot of sense, and it's kind of scary that it makes so much sense that this is trending towards a really big problem.
Yeah.
Kind of worried me a little bit anyway.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I mean, I don't actually know of that many people talking about this stuff except on a big scale, except for Dalio. Yeah. Dalio's obviously been the lead advocate on the fact that he believes the US has a very strong chance of losing its being the superpower of the world. So, I guess, I don't know. I never kind of listen to Ray Dalio's predictions and go, okay, that's what's going to happen, because he has been wrong before, but I like hearing his explanations for how these mechanisms generally work or have worked in the past, because it's quite fascinating.
Yep. All right, moving on.
All right. Let's bring it back.
What you got?
Let's bring it back to Australia, and let's talk about the Australian inflation data, which is still getting better, kind of, sort of.
Nice.
A little bit.
You're going to get riled up
kind
here,
of.
Hamish.
No, I'm not. Okay, I'm going to stay completely calm.
No, you're not.
I'm going to stay completely calm. Okay?
No, you're not. No, you're not.
God damn. No, I'm kidding. So the monthly...
you like that seagull meme? You know the seagull meme with the laser eyes? When he tilts his head back and goes... Rah!
Yeah. That's me every 30 days when I see the headlines.
You've got your head tilted back right now, and you're ready to go. Rah!
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So the monthly CPI indicator rose 5.6% in the 12 months to May in Australia, which is a pretty dramatic slowdown from the 6.8% recorded last month. Although, again, as we kind of spoke about last month, and as we've been talking about in the US, almost all of the declines are being driven by kind of one category, which is energy, and specifically an energy automotive fuel and gasoline. So automotive fuel is down 8% year over year. But besides that, that's pretty much it. Out of all of the categories, there was only one other category that was down, which was clothing and footwear, was down 0.4%. So if you want to go buy some shoes,
Thank God shoes are cheaper.
they're a little bit cheaper than last year.
I was sweating on that one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, with my fashion taste, yeah, I'm sure everybody knows. This is the first time I've worn this navy t-shirt. And I definitely don't have 10 of these in my cupboard that I cycle through.
Love it.
So, but everything else besides clothing, footwear, and automotive fuel was up a lot. So. While the headline number I think looks quite nice, unfortunately, if you look into some of the details, it's not great. So food and non-alcoholic beverage was up 7.9% year over year. Housing was up 8.4% year over year. And within housing, rent was up 6.4%. New dwellings was up 8.3%. And electricity was up 14.1%. So it's not just all of energy that's going down. It's kind of just automotive fuel. Insurance was up 7.8%. Holiday travel was up 7.8%. And the worst individual item was dairy, which was up 15.1%.
Yeah, crazy.
So,
Some big rises in there, eh?
Yeah, I mean, certainly once you start looking at the individual items, it doesn't look as good as that 5.6% headline number. I mean, if you do it a lot of driving, sure, like things have been improving for you.
Yeah.
But regardless.
But if you're doing other things like living in a house,
whoever does
turning
that,
on the lights,
buying food, non-alcoholic beverages, do people drink those? No, but it is interesting, and it's a similar situation to the US, where now, because fuel has been coming down so much, the headline inflation number is actually below the core inflation number. Right. So again, core inflation is being much more resilient. So once you strip out the volatile stuff like oil and volatile food and travel, Australian inflation was 6.4% for the month, which is only slightly down from 6.5%. So again, same story as the US, same story as the past couple of months. Yeah. Core inflation is proving to be a lot stickier, and then kind of oil prices are just kind of making everything look overall a lot cheaper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting because last year, a big part of why food and travel prices rose so much in the first place was because of the fuel price increases. So fuel was going up, and that was kind of driving up everything else as well. So now that fuel's coming down, the big question is kind of, will food and travel also come down over time? Yeah. Will it kind of follow trend in the same way that it rose? That's yet to be seen so far. And unfortunately, if consumers just continue to buy if they just fill the demand, then there's really no reason for, let's say shopping center or supermarkets like Woolworths and Coles. There's no reason for them to lower prices if consumers are just filling the demand, which seems to be what's happening, and that's what inflation is. All right, if there's more demand chasing the supply, then they can raise prices, and it's sustainable. So that's kind of
supply and demand.
Yeah, it's a second supply and demand.
Sell me this pen. Why don't you go write your name down on that napkin over there? Can't need a pen. Exactly, supply and demand.
That's great. Great quote. I love that great movie. I haven't watched that movie in a while. I have to go watch it again.
I totally threw.
But yes, you're right. Supply and demand. You're right. Supply and demand. There's lots of demand,
full
and
stop.
There's not much
All
supply.
Right.
So
next question.
Inflation. No, but that's basically it. We've got a rate decision. The RBA will be making a tough rate decision on Tuesday because every headline under the moon is saying that they don't need to raise because inflation is under control now. So there'll be a lot of pressure on them to not raise. So we'll see. I actually don't know what will happen. Again, for maybe the fourth month in a row, markets are very confident there will be no rate hike. They might be correct this time. I'm genuinely not sure. I have no idea.
Guess we'll find out.
We will find out next week, and we'll talk about it next week.
great. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Where should we go? Oh, I want to talk about Satya Nadella's comments. Do you see this?
No, I didn't. What has he said?
It's classic, Hamish. Microsoft CEO. So, background. Not that we need any background at this point, but Microsoft is trying to acquire Activision Blizzard. That's being blocked by the FTC because they're worried. The FTC is saying that if Microsoft keeps buying all these gaming companies, they're going to have a monopoly. And Microsoft is saying, we don't have a monopoly. And so the saga continues. Anyway, such as convenient comments is what I've titled this. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said Wednesday that he would like to eliminate exclusive arrangements between video games and popular gaming consoles. Right. Larger gaming rivals Nintendo and Sony often release exclusive titles on their devices as a way to lure customers in a competitive market. Microsoft employs the same strategy for Xbox. Though Nadella said his company is a low share player in the console market. Regarding exclusive deals, Nadella said, I have no love for that world.
Surprise.
I would never.
Wow.
I would absolutely never think about doing an exclusivity deal and not allowing Call of Duty on PlayStation. I would never, ever, ever do that, guys. Come on, look at me. Look me in the eye. Anyway.
Also, the company that has historically had the worst exclusive titles is just conveniently not interested in exclusive titles. It's like when you lose, lost the race and then suddenly the race is rigged.
True. Nadella spoke at a hearing in federal court in San Francisco as the FTC seeks judicial support to prevent Microsoft from closing its $68.7 billion acquisition of video game publisher Activision Blizzard. The FTC is worried that the tie-up could allow Microsoft to withhold popular games in Activision's library from other consoles or degrade service for those games elsewhere. Microsoft has said it wants to add Activision games to its Game Pass subscription service. To quell regulator concerns, Microsoft has offered 10-year agreements to make Activision's popular Call of Duty titles available for Sony and Nintendo consoles. We want you guys to have this. We really do. We really do. We are the good guys here. We love a nice competitive market. No. Of course they're going to do this. The FTC's coming after them, so they're slowly being like, oh, but what if we did this? You would you like us then? But what if we did that too? Would you like us then? And now they've even got the CEO to come out and say, hey, I don't want to be a monopoly, even though I do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway. Sony hasn't accepted Microsoft's offer and is opposed to its acquisition of Activision. Surprise, surprise. I believe that this transaction is bad for competition, Jim Ryan, head of Sony Interactive Entertainment, said in a video deposition that was played in court on Tuesday. Nadella, I guess they do raise a bit of a point. Nadella's view on consoles reflects his broader approach to technology platforms. Since becoming CEO in 2014, he's changed the culture at the company, long known for proprietary closed systems, attempting to ensure that its software can work well on multiple devices, not just its own hardware. Microsoft spokesperson said Nadella's comments on Wednesday, quote, made it abundantly clear that Microsoft will honor its commitments to its partners and the gaming community to bring more games to more players. Any thoughts on that, Hamish? All fluff?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
All fluff.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't followed this super closely. And it
seems like fluff.
It does seem like very classic, last-ditch effort. Please, like you said, kind of how many things can we kind of throw out there to potentially win over the FTC? But it doesn't look good for them for this acquisition. It's been pending for a very, very long time now. So
a little bit too long. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually didn't check. I should have checked what the stock price is at currently.
I will have a look.
What's the market? what's the market cap on
Activision?
Activision Blizzard, because Microsoft wants to buy it for $68.7 billion. What's the market cap on it now?
It is now $65.7 billion. So there's actually not much.
The spread is closed.
Yeah, it's actually closed a lot. So in April, it fell about 15% in a week. But then since then, it's up 10%. So it's just been rising slowly towards the acquisition price, which is not you would expect. But yeah, maybe I'm missing something because I haven't been looking at this closely. But all I've heard is that it's just bad news across the board.
Yeah. What else have I got here? Activision CEO Bobby Kotick is skeptical of multi-game subscription services in general. He said in court on Wednesday that his company has experimented with them, including working with NVIDIA's GeForce Now while it was in its testing phase. Kotick, whose company is based in Santa Monica, California, just in case you wanted to know that, said he still wants to get the deal done with Microsoft, even if he holds a differing opinion on subscriptions and whether they present a big opportunity. Yeah, interesting. Okay, there you go. Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley will decide if the FTC will receive a preliminary injunction that would stop Microsoft from closing the deal. Meanwhile, in the UK, the Competition and Markets Authority moved to block the transaction in April. Yeah, there you go. That's all. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
so
it is strange that the stock is trading so close to the acquisition price because maybe there's some insider information that's.
I think there's people out there that know more than us, Hamish.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's true. Yeah.
I struggle to believe it personally, but I guess we do have to keep it open as an option. There might be someone out there that knows more than us.
Maybe one.
Maybe, yeah. Max two.
Yeah,
Max two.
Yeah.
Okay. Where to, Hamish? Where to?
Let's talk about corporate bankruptcies in the US. They're actually on the rise a lot over the past year. There's been a sharp increase in the number of companies that are defaulting as a result, essentially of, I guess in part because of the sharp US interest rate increases that have kind of been happening over the past year.
Can I just say, I'm not surprised.
I am shocked.
What?
You mean to tell me?
Increase in corporate bankruptcies over the last what?
Yeah. So yeah, this is an absolute shock to nobody.
the most anticipated piece of news all year.
Yeah, I actually wrote this at the start of the year. I've been waiting to pull this out. But
it's like when we were shocked that the RBA raises rates.
Yeah. Shocker.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Shock, horror, unbelievable. But of course, yeah, particularly when it comes to unprofitable, struggling companies, if you go through a significant rate hike series as the US has over the past year, then the cost to service those payments goes up and up and up, and then it gets very difficult for them to refinance. So it makes perfect sense that this is what we're seeing. When we're talking about corporate bankruptcies, we're referring to public or private companies that have at least $2 million in public debt. So they kind of sell bonds to the market, but also private companies that have at least $10 million in assets or liabilities. So this isn't every corporation. This isn't kind of looking at bankruptcies across all corporations in the US, just kind of the small upper percentage. And this data is coming from S&P Global's Market Intelligence. This year so far, there's been 236 companies that have filed for bankruptcy compared to 109 in the same period last year. So more than 100% increase in the number of bankruptcies filed. And it's actually the highest number of annual bankruptcies in that period since 2010. So they're certainly getting up there. The largest ones include some names that we've spoken about over the past couple of years. Exactly. Say a quiet prayer. So we'll do a minute of silence for these corporations.
Wow, way to go for retention there, Hamish. A minute silence. All right.
I almost want to do it now just to look at the retention graph.
Just fall off a cliff. Oh, I don't know.
No,
I don't
we
hate
won't.
myself that much.
We
Sorry.
won't do that.
Continue with your list.
Yes, so we have Bed Bath & Beyond, sadly no longer with us. SVB Financial Group, which of course was Silicon Valley. We all know what happened to them. And Diamond Sports Group was the other big one, which is what do they do? Regional Sports Cable Network. Yeah, who cares? Who cares about that? But Bed Bath & Beyond, very sad. Very, very sad.
So maybe too. Wasn't that one of the meme stocks?
Yeah, so Bed Bath & Beyond was that one that, I mean, it's been on the verge of bankruptcy for a while. So they have a huge amount of kind of brick and mortar stores, and they sell quite generic products. So they've really been one of those retailers that have been hurt by Amazon and just online retailing in general. And in the last kind of year of their, before they went bankrupt, they were trying to go into more home brand private label stuff to kind of differentiate away from just the generic brands that people could just buy cheaper online. But they unfortunately weren't able to do it. But I think, are you looking at the stock chart for Bed Bath & Beyond? Is this the one that had that massive spike at some point? Yeah, so I think...
August 2022, stock went from $4.80 up to $23.
Yeah, so they had, it went through one of those hysterias where a company right near bankruptcy suddenly gets a huge stock price, and they took that opportunity to sell a bunch of stock at a really high price. So they got some capital out of it, but wasn't enough, unfortunately.
It wasn't to be.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Do the shares still trade? It looks like they're still trading 34 cents.
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not quite sure about that. But yeah, it was $23 and now it's 34 cents.
Wow. Great return.
great return. What is that exactly? That is 98.5% loss.
Yeah. Soon to be 100.
What's Buffett's rule? Yeah, what's Buffett's rule number 1 again?
Don't lose more than 99.9%. So I think it's good.
Oh,
I think it's fine.
Okay, so we're all good. Okay,
Yeah.
phew. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the story here is, I mean, with these three, and then generally with kind of all of these bankruptcies, is all of these businesses had enormous debt loads that they couldn't handle, but that wasn't like the core problem that led to them needing to use excessive amounts of debt. So for Bed Bath & Beyond, it's kind of Amazon, SVB, of course, had their kind of mismanagement of client assets, essentially loading up too much on these long-term treasuries. And then Diamond Sports is a regional cable network, so they've just kind of suffered the first part of the accelerating cable cutting that's kind of been going across the US. So, yeah, again, not surprising. In terms of which industries are getting hit the hardest, again, it's not surprising. The biggest category was consumer discretionary, which was 13% of the filings, so non-essential consumer products. Makes perfect sense that those would be the first to go. And then that's followed by industrials, financials, healthcare, all with double-digit filings. But there were filings across all industries, so it's certainly not a problem that's unique to certain industries.
Nope, that does make sense.
Yep.
That does make sense. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder what 2024 will hold. Oh, this is was this was data for 22. I wonder what
sorry. So this was the start of 2023. So we can see kind of how it progresses throughout the year, but so far it's over 100% increase in bankruptcies this year. So
Yeah, and I would say almost a 100% decrease in IPOs, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Seems like the interest rates and market conditions. There's some sort of I don't know.
There's
Maybe
something going on there.
It looks like there's some sort of link, some sort of correlation. Some would say. Correlation does not equal causation, Brandon. You just got that etched into my brain. I never say something is caused by something else anymore, just because I've always got that etched into my brain. Correlation does not equal causation. Anyway, yeah, very interesting. Not surprising at all. All right. Yep. You want to hear something real funny?
Yeah.
German e-read. This is thanks to the Daily Upside too. I was just having a browse on what was going on the Daily Upside. This one kind of caught my eye. German e-retailer launches legal fight against big tech classification.
Oh.
So it starts by saying, no one wants to be tarred with the Zuck brush. Zalando, a German fashion e-retailer, is taking the EU to court after it was classified as a very large online platform for the purposes of the bloc's upcoming Digital Services Act. It's kind of funny that, most people would be like, oh, we just got classified as a very large online platform, guys. That is so cool. And these guys are like, please do not call, please.
I mean, it depends who's doing the classifying. If it's the government, it's always never a good thing.
Exactly right, Hamish Hodder. Zalando doesn't want to be lumped in with the dastardly likes of Amazon, Google, Meta, and Apple. This is why I like the Daily Upside. Just their wording is fantastic. Apple, and most importantly, it doesn't want to be regulated like them. Regulators love to say they're reining in big tech, but what does that term actually mean? Culturally, big tech has been shorthand for a handful of unfathomably rich US companies with nebulous but overlapping business models. Common symptoms include algorithms, data collection, and congressional hearings. But a simple list of those companies hardly comprises a future-proof legislative framework. Plus, it can raise hackles from the US government over unfair persecution of its wildly successful tech firms. The DSA, the Digital Services Act, which will come into force in August, will regulate huge swaths of the online world, from disinformation to consumer rights to algorithmic transparency. It will apply most stringently to companies that qualify as, you guessed it, very large online platforms, which it defines as any platform with more than 45 million monthly visitors, much to Zalando's dismay, because Zalando is arguing that the EU shouldn't be looking at the visitors to its site, which number around 83 million per month, but rather look at those who actually buy things from third-party vendors on their site, which is closer to 31 million. One's obviously over the number, one's obviously under the number. To put those numbers into context, Amazon said in March 2022 it has over 300 million active customer accounts. Right. So very interesting that they're trying to say, look, we're not as big as you think, we're not as powerful as you think. Please don't regulate us like the others. Yeah. By getting them to hopefully use a different number for them. The number of actual customers as opposed to the number of visitors to the site.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird classification, because all of those, just doing it by your monthly viewers is collecting a very broad number of online platforms. I mean, Zalando, what is it? Zalando? Zalando. They're an online retailer. Like, they sell clothing, I think, mostly. So it's completely different business to social media platforms, for example. So it's a very broad definition. Seems strange. Yeah.
I guess they want the power to regulate everybody, Hamish. Yeah. So they'll keep their definitions as loose as possible.
Yeah, interesting.
That's what I would imagine anyway. I don't really know. But anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. How often do you hear big companies try and talk down their achievement? It's kind of like exactly what's happened with this Microsoft thing with Activision Blizzard. No, we're not. We don't have no, we're not a very good company. Xbox sucks compared to PlayStation. Yeah. We suck. We can't make video games to save our life.
Yeah, companies like that talk up their presence up until the point of monopoly, and then all of a sudden it's no. There's heaps of competition. But in every other marketing piece, it's their number one. We're the only one, and that sort of thing. And then
it's like, who was it? I think Monish Prabrai said a way to tell if a company has a moat is whether they argue that they don't have a moat.
Exactly. Yeah, if they're arguing they're not a monopoly, they're probably a monopoly.
They're a monopoly. Anyway, I thought that was fun. What else we got, Hamish?
Let's talk about this gambling ad ban in Australia, because
I've seen something about this. Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, this just kind of unfolded over the last week, and it's a pretty interesting story, because it does potentially have some very significant consequences for live sports in Australia and a bunch of things, and it really did kind of it's a story that's kind of evolved, and we've now got, over the past few days, responses from all different parties kind of involved. So there's kind of quite a lot to go through. But Gambling advertisements could be forbidden in Australia within 3 years, as the Albanese government mulls recommendations of a report following the parliamentary inquiry into online gambling harm. One of the recommendations from the inquiry was to phase out gambling advertising over 3 years. The recommended ban would apply across television, radio, newspapers, and online. So,
everything. Full stop.
So they've kind of done this inquiry into potential harm of gambling advertising, and this was just kind of one part of the inquiry. It was an inquiry across a bunch of different categories of potential harmful advertising and that sort of thing. And this was kind of just one of them, but this kind of caught the spotlight because I think we have the biggest gambling losses out of any country in the world per capita, or something insane like that. So it's certainly, alongside, I guess, like alcohol.
Is sports betting even a thing over in the States? Not as much,
I think
right?
So. I think it was banned for a while, and then now I think it's starting to become less banned. I think. I'm not sure.
Please let us know. Yeah, please let us know. Yeah, like just from wherever you are around the world, what are the kind of rules around sports betting in your country? Because we can just bet on anything pretty much. Just like log in to your betting account whenever you want. Bet on basketball. Bet on AFL, cricket, whatever, soccer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the US has sports betting. I'd be extremely surprised if they didn't.
I just remember there was something about. Maybe it was how they promote it, or the advertise. Maybe it was even around the advertising. There's something different about the States and how they treat gambling. It's like a lot looser in Australia.
Yeah, maybe it was. Do whatever you want. There was some type of gambling that was banned. I can't remember what it was. Whether it was like online casino gambling potentially was maybe banned or something like that. But I'm not exactly sure.
Sorry, but, I'm not too sure.
But in Australia, it's pretty much free for all. And then certainly over the past like decade or so, you've seen this kind of rise of these online platforms like Sportsbet and Ladbrokes, and it's kind of hard not to see their advertising everywhere. I think everyone would agree it's plastered everywhere. Especially, I don't know about you. I think they just target, especially online. I think they just target like our men and in our age group, because I never go on gambling websites and every second ad is Sportsbet. Like it's so strange. Like the amount of advertising, it seems that way at least. Like the amount of advertising these companies are doing is crazy. So the committee also recommended the government implement a comprehensive national strategy on gambling harm reduction, create an online gambling ombudsman, impose new harm reduction levies, and improve its data collection. The committee chair, Peter Murphy, said the timeline for ad bans would, quote, give major sports and broadcasters time to find alternative advertisers and sponsors while preventing another generation from experiencing escalating gambling harm. She went on to say, gambling advertising and simulated gambling through video games is grooming children and young people to gamble and encourages riskier behavior. The torrent of advertising is inescapable and is manipulating an impressionable and vulnerable audience to gamble online. So
that is the one thing I wouldn't mind seeing eliminated, is the preconditioning of children in video games to gambling.
Yeah.
The whole just like loot boxes, have a free spin and you might get a prize. Like that kind of, I know that you if it's, if it's free, they're not actually, there's no money involved, and it's just like, you killed 5 people this game in Call of Duty, now you get a free spin for a loot box. It's like, it's that conditioning.
It's activating the same part of the brain, I would imagine. Yeah, I don't think it matters that. I don't think it matters to a like, let's say a small child or something. Like, I don't think it matters that you're not winning cash, that there's not a chance of making
you're winning
money.
Something.
I think it's that you're winning something and that there's chance involved. I think those are the elements that are probably more important. Yeah, so it is strange, because that is something that nobody really talks about. It's like especially in the last, I would say 5 years, games have really ramped up their kind of additional purchases in games, and then as a result of that, microtransactions, and then as a result of that, kind of these loot boxes where people can just basically play slots on getting skins and that sort of thing.
Actually though, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so
crazy.
crazy. The gambling industry provides a large source of revenue for Australia's broadcast networks, with a total of $310 million spent by the sector in 2022. So, no surprise, gambling's an enormous part of the, particularly live sporting kind of space. I think I don't know what the numbers are on alcohol, but I'm probably guessing between alcohol and gambling advertisers and sales of those things, I would guess they probably represent a very, very large part, if not the majority of revenue that goes towards these kind of live sporting events. We now have kind of responses from different sides. I'm sure you can imagine what some of these responses look like. So we have Bridget Fair, which is the CEO of Free TV, which acts on behalf of all the free channel networks, so Channel 7, 9 and 10, said on Wednesday the proposed ban was based on a flawed premise that the advertising market was some kind of magic pudding, and warns that falls in ad revenue would result in less funding for Australian television content. She went on to say, these services are available to every Australian, no matter where they live or how much they earn, and are only possible because of advertising revenue. So basically arguing, especially kind of free TV, that hosts a lot of the sport that everyone loves. A large part of that is just it's based on advertising revenue.
Makes sense.
Rather than kind of having to pay for any kind of subscription. Responsible Wagering Australia, which represents some of the country's biggest bookmakers, including Sportsbet, Attain, and Ladbrokes. I just love how these these lobbying groups just have the most ridiculous names.
It's like the opposite.
Responsible Wagering Australia, and like their whole business is to get money from you. But it's
exactly.
They essentially argued that restricting regulated wagering providers from advertising would only entice at risk of gambling harm to would only entice those at risk of gambling harm to seek out unregulated bookies who will not abide by the rules. So I don't know about
classic
that.
argument.
I don't know about that.
That's the legalized drugs argument.
Yeah, but. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that argument. It's a bit flawed in my view. What if they don't advertise, people will go to unregulated? I don't think so. I mean, if someone's thinking about gambling, I don't think blocking advertising is going to mean they'll go to an illegal bookie. They'll just go, if they're thinking about it, they'll just still go to Sportsbet. It'll probably just reduce people who didn't think about gambling from going and doing it.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, Tabcorp, which is not a member of RWA, welcomed the proposal after previously joining advocates in supporting a total ban on gambling broadcast advertising. Tabcorp's chief said the report's release marked an important moment for the sustainability of the wagering industry, reiterating a point from the inquiry's hearing that a proliferation of gambling advertising is excessive. Which
I wonder how much Tabcorp advertises. Probably not a lot compared to the others, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tabcorp's they've got to be the best response out of all of these, because they've come out saying it's all about the kids and this is fantastic. But the truth is, all of this advertising, a lot of it is being done by these new players on the block, Sportsbet and Ladbrokes, and these companies that are just taking market share away from Tabcorp, which has kind of been the traditional, offline gambling company, which has now kind of lost a lot of market share to these online betting companies. So I thought that was pretty funny. They obviously they care about the children. They're there for the children.
Thank you, Tab.
Yeah. So you have
Appreciate it.
Do you have any thoughts? Any thoughts?
It's all to be expected. Like, of course, Tab's going to say that when they're losing market share to the other ones that are advertising more and getting good success. Of course, the response, what was it? RWA is going to say, oh, no, let him do it. And of course, this is all going to happen. It's just what actually happens, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have much to add on this, except for just drifting into opinion territory, but I don't even have a strong opinion. The only thing I have a decent opinion on in this topic is what I was talking about before, the kind of preconditioning of children to gambling type behaviors. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about, like, obviously people have mad gambling problems. I tend to lean on the side, just generally, not in terms of gambling, but just generally, of like, just let people do what they want to do. But I don't know, like, so if advertising is misleading, then fair enough. But if it's just straight advertising, then I don't see a huge problem with it. I mean, maybe that's just because I'm basing my opinion off of my own personal circumstances, that I watch sport all the time and never has a gambling advertisement made me want to gamble. So, but I can understand for other people it would be the opposite. They might see these and they'd be like, oh yeah, you know, $2 for that multi, oh, I'll take that, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't really know exactly where I fall. I don't have a huge amount of data or evidence in my brain about it.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what they kind of decide to do and how it impacts things anyway.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I don't really care all that much about gambling ads. The only interesting aspect of it is, just the fact that I guess if you're watching the footy with your kids, then, you know, all of the, like 90% of the ads are either going to be Sportsbet or some other gambling site or an alcohol company. And that can't be good. Like if a kid is watching,
it normalizes
every Friday and Saturday night, let's say, so like for multiple hours, they're seeing ad after ad after ad of both gambling and alcohol. And then what's the other one in there? Like Uber Eats. Like, none of those are particularly good for, just drilling into a kid's mind. So that's one aspect of it. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. I guess we'll see.
Yep, very interesting. But yeah, that is what's going down. All right, that will pretty much bring us to the end. Or let's squeeze in one Q&A question. As always, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, just go to either the most recent episode on Spotify and you can drop it in the questions box, or you can head over to the YouTube video, the most recent YouTube version of the podcast, and drop it down in the comments section below, and we will endeavor to answer it on the podcast. All right, Hamish. Here we go. This is an interesting one. Bit of a grim question here. Yeah, it is a bit of a grim question, actually. What do you think happens to Berkshire Hathaway's stock the day that Warren Buffett dies? And also, he's allegedly advised his family to invest in the S&P 500 broadly after he passes away. Why do you think that is? Let's tackle the first bit. What do you reckon happens to Berkshire stock when he kicks the bucket?
I think it goes down probably a reasonable amount. But it's not, it is interesting because Berkshire's shareholders,
they're different.
They are different. They're certainly over time, I'm sure he's developed more shareholders that are not kind of his classic long-term shareholders who certainly probably won't even touch the stock and probably haven't for decades and probably won't touch the stock even when this happens. But I think it's hard to not believe that there's probably quite a large percentage of investors who no longer want to be in Berkshire stock after Buffett's no longer there. So that there's probably a chunk, I think, a long-term loss of some shareholders, but certainly on the day you would expect this maybe some temporary short-term loss as well. But yeah, you never really know.
I think there would be some losses in the stock around his demise. Poor old Warren. I hate speaking about Warren like this, but I think the thing that really makes stock prices move is when something very unexpected happens. So what was the stock that you owned where the CEO passed away suddenly?
Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Roadhouse. Yeah. What did that do to the stock? Moved it quite a bit. Was it like 20% or something?
Yeah, it was pretty significant. It was probably 15 or 20%. Because it was unexpected.
Nobody could have seen that coming.
No.
The thing about Berkshire Hathaway is that everybody sees this coming. They know that it's going to happen. They're just like, it's just a question of when. I mean, he's 92, 93, Charlie's 99. And every single year for about the past 25 years at their shareholder meetings, they've been asked, what's the succession plan? What are the steps you're going to take when one of you... And they talk very frankly about it too, Warren and Charlie. They're not shy. They're like, look, when we're not around anymore, when we eventually die, this is what will happen. You know, Greg Abel's going to be the CEO. Ted and Todd are going to run the investment side of things. Ajit's going to run insurance. That's going to continue. Yeah. So I don't think anyone's not like it'll definitely be sad. It'll be so sad, but I don't think anyone's going to be taken off guard by it. So I don't think it'll cause a massive drop in the share price. There'll be some for sure, but
yeah. And regardless, you know, the short term is completely irrelevant. You know, long term, the performance of the stock will reflect the performance of the businesses. And, you know, maybe you could argue that the performance of the businesses or the group of businesses they own could be affected by them not being around anymore. But you know, that also might not be the case. You know, in the long run, it's not really going to matter what happens on the day or the week that, you know, he passes away.
Yeah, exactly. Allegedly advised his family to invest in the S&P 500 broadly after he passes. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I can't actually remember exactly what he said on that topic, because I believe I'm actually not sure, to be completely honest. But yeah, I mean, Buffett's been an advocate for a very long time for just buying the S&P. Yeah. So that's not super surprising.
I think it's more like the question's more like, why wouldn't they just hold Berkshire stock?
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely infer from that he maybe has less confidence in the people succeeding him than himself in outperforming the market. But I think that's just been his broad view on stock markets for a long time, is that most people won't outperform. So, you know, when push comes to shove, most of the time you probably prefer an index fund versus trusting someone else to try and beat the market.
And even, I should say, even over the last couple of years, he has just straight out said, he's almost been accused, like, why shouldn't people hold? He's like, I've never told anyone that they should hold Berkshire stock. Yeah. So that's kind of his like rhetoric. He's like, I've never told anyone that they should hold Berkshire stock. No. I say they should own the S&P 500. So I think that's kind of the vibe that he's going with.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's it. Thanks, Hamish. Well done.
Yep.
Another podcast under the belt. Mm-hmm. How you feeling? You feeling good?
Yeah, doing good.
You feeling ready to do another 8 hours of work today?
I'm ready to do 8 hours of editing. Can't wait.
Woo. Here we go. And that is our life. Everyone's always like, being a YouTuber, you guys must have such a cool life. If only you knew.
Yeah, on the treadmill.
That's literally us. Yeah. Go and watch someone running on a treadmill and just imagine that the treadmill never stops. That's us. Anyway, really, that's a bit grim. No, we do like what we do, but it does get a little bit treadmillish sometimes. Oh dear. Anyway, that's enough for today. Thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks, Hamish, for joining me as always. Thank you for Seeking Alphas. Thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.